My topic is injury and the study of injury is coming under traumatology. Basically, being a student, sorry, being a student and a doctor, we need to know that a patient which has reported in an ER to a medical legal section has received what kind of an injury, whether it is accidental, suicidal, homicidal, or this injury is a simple injury, or it's a grievous injury, or this injury is a closed wound or an open wound. This is the duty of a doctor to provide an information to the police and the judiciary about the extent of that injury. We need to tell them about what kind of a weapon has been used. We need to tell them about how much time has passed. What is the time since injury? In few of the cases, the patient, he dies. After getting critically injured, he dies. So we calculate the time since injury, which we will discuss later on, most probably in our next lecture. And we calculate time since death. We get the time since injury exactly by going through the observations. In few of the cases, when the patient is critically injured, reports to an ER directly, you inform the police about it. And in the meantime, you look at the interest of the patient, you go for, aseptic dressing, wound debridement, and all these things. You advise or ask the dresser or a doctor in an ER to stitch this injury or this wound. Before he stitches, before he makes a wound debridement, you just put down your observations on a piece of paper, and those observations which you have placed on a piece of paper, that is first-hand knowledge, and you can well decide with that what kind of a weapon has been used, what kind of injury it is, how much time has passed, and if this is an injury because of a sharp cutting weapon, maybe it's a hardened blunt weapon, maybe it's a firearm injury. So you just put down your observation that the margins were like this, and the injury was maybe hardened blunt. It was because of the road traffic accident. And by looking at the injury, you can classify that as well, whether this was a split type of a lacerations because of the blunt injury, whether it was a type of overstretching type of injury, etc., etc. We will discuss later. So the study of injury is coming under traumatology. What is injury? Injury is any harm whatsoever illegally caused to a person, body, mind, or reputation is coming under traumatology. Again, injury is any harm whatsoever illegally caused to a person in body, mind, or reputation coming under injury. And this injury is of different types. But being a doctor, we are concerned about only the mechanical injuries, the injuries produced by the mechanical means. We are not bothered about who has beaten him. We are not bothered what time, which side, which place. We just look at the patient and we put down our observation on a piece of paper. So the study of injury is coming under traumatology. And this is a Greek word. This trauma is a Greek word which means body injury, wound, or a painful emotional experience. When the patient experiences a wound or an injury over the body, this is coming under traumatology. And the traumatology, the traumatos was an old Greek word which was used that what patient was. Injury, as I said, according to the Pakistan Penal Code, the injury is defined as any harm whatsoever illegally caused to a person in body, mind, or reputation is coming under injury. The medical profession is concerned with only the mechanical injury, the injury produced by the mechanical means. We are concerned about that, and which we just observe and we put on a piece of paper. And those observations later on will be placed on a medical legal report. You know very well the medical legal report is a report being issued by the medical legal officer on the request of police officer to know about the causes of injuries, weapon use, time since injury, and you declare the weapon. This was the extent of the injury, and on that extent, it is decided at the same time how much punishment will be given to the accused or how much injury he has produced in the victim. So that is coming under the injury, and we declare that this was by hardened blunt weapon, this was of such and such size on such and such part of the body, and it was because up to such an extent. You will declare at the same time that this injury was of this type. So the punishment will be maybe 2 years. Maybe the punishment will be 4 to 6 years. Punishment may be 14 years, like this. I'll give you example. You are putting your observation on a piece of paper that the person has suffered this injury. And you have advised the ER staff to go for a wound debridement, maintain IV line, give the ADS injection, and in the meantime, they are just making the wound debridement. They will stitch the wound. After they have stitched the wound, there will be no one who will put down his observation. There is no one who will cut down the stitches and will observe again, or will put down or will recheck. You will be the first and last person who has a first-hand knowledge and who has put down an observation on a piece of paper that what kind of injury he has suffered, and you declare the weapon used by looking at the features of the wound. You will declare the time since injury, how much time has passed since the person got injured. So the most important part is you declare that this person, according to the classification, according to the law, according to the Qisas and Diyat ordinance, that is the ordinance which we are following since 1979. In old days, we used to follow a British law, and obviously Pakistan Penal Code is a fully ditto copy of British Penal Code because we were the colony of Britishers. Later on, when Pakistan came into being, then we converted that British Penal Code into Pakistan Penal Code. And in Pakistan Penal Code, they declare or they write section so and so is for this reason, Section 375 is for this reason, or Section 376 is for such and such injury, or maybe Section 324 is for such, and there is a definition in it. And obviously, you must have seen in the movies that the lawyers or the judiciary, they just quote that according to the Section 375 Pakistan Penal Code, it is somewhat like this. In Section 370, is somewhat like this. But as I said, since 1979, for the injuries we have when the person is alive, he got injured. Maybe simply he is having a simple injury. Maybe he is having some kind of grievous injury. It is darb shadid. But we have a Muslim law, and that is the Qisas and Diyat ordinance. We are dealing according to that. I will just give you a little example, and we will have this in our third lecture. In case of injury, when somebody gives a punch on the face, and there is a slight bleeding from it, the injuries are classified into 5 types. One is called shajja. Number 2 is called jara. Number 3 is called tlaf al-udu. Number 4 is called tlaf al-salayat al-udu. And number 5 is other injuries or dangerous injuries. This tlaf al-udu is, as the name suggests, uzu, when this any power of the organ, any part of the body is having an injury, or when it has been detached from the body, maybe a hand is being cut because of some injury, because of some accident. That was atlaf al-udu. That aza has been removed from the body. Number 2 is called atlaf al-salayat al-udu. This is, as the name suggests, salayat is the power of the organ, like a smell, like a taste, like a sight, like hearing. When any power of the organ is being damaged permanently, you just declare atlaf al-salayat al-udu. Number 3 is called shajja, and in shajja, again I must tell you that the patient is alive. The patient is not dead. The qatl has not taken place. The murder has not taken place. Patient has not died, has not expired. You know, death is a complete irreversible cessation of the vital function of the body, and it cannot reverse back, has died. But in this case, patient is alive. He got injured. So this shajja is the injury of head and face only, the injury of head and face only, and the jara is the injury on other parts of the body except head and face. And 5th one is called the other injuries, coming under other injuries. I was giving you a little example. When you give a punch and there's a slight bleeding, this is called kafifa oblique shajja, because the injury of head and face is called shajja. When you give a punch and slight flap comes over it and the bone is exposed, is called mudia oblique shajja. When you give a punch and the bleeding is there, flap comes over, bone is exposed, and the bone is fractured, this is called hashima oblique shajja. Then, when all these things are there and dislocation has taken place, this is called munakla oblique shajja. And when a person, he reports to you, taken a bath in a blood, has got an injury on the head, that is with an iron rod, and on an x-ray, the skull is fractured, that's another story. What kind of a fracture? So he got fracture, but brain membrane is intact. He is well oriented in time and space. Reports to you. This is called amma oblique shajja, but the brain membrane is intact. When the fracture, bleeding, trauma, all these things are there, and the brain tissue started coming out, brain membrane has been damaged, and the brain started coming out, you know very well, this is the clinical death, and obviously the person, if he survives, he will not have that quality of life what he was having before. That part which has got damaged will lose the activity of that area, and this is called Damiga. And as I said, it is a brain death. You declare. So by going through Khafifa, Mudia, Hashima, Munakala, Amma, Damiga, you declare that this is the extent of the injury, and the punishment is specified before that. Like if you give a punch, slight bleeding is there. If the person, he says, I'm sorry, it was my mistake, I'll pay the compensation, it will be coming under Qisas and Diyat. Qisas is the injury on the same part, and the Diyat is the compensation paid against that. He says, I'm sorry, it was my mistake. In old days, we used to keep it under section 304A, and if he pays the compensation, well, otherwise he has to go through with the punishment for 2 years' time with a slight injury over the face. And I told you the injury over the face is called shajar. So the definition of the injury is illegally any harm whatsoever illegally caused to a person in body, mind, or reputation is coming under injury. The medical legal profession is concerned with only the mechanical injury. The injury produced by the mechanical means are coming under hurt. Whoever causes bodily pain, disease, infirmity to person, or impairs, disables, or dismembers any organ of the body or any part of any person without causing death is said to have caused hurt to him. You usually use the word, you have hurted me, or the hurt has been produced, etc., etc. So any person, he will produce body pain, disease, infirmity deliberately or undeliberately will be coming under the hurt. Wound. Basically, these wounds, they are being classified. They are being classified into two types. I told you in old days we were dealing these wounds according to the British Penal Code. That was simple injury and the grievous injury. The simple injury was darbe khafif and the grievous injury was darbe shadid. The darbe khafif was a simple injury, the injury which used to heal up without leaving any scar within a week or 10 days time. That was a simple injury. And the grievous injury was when a person, he has a fracture or he has lost his teeth, or maybe permanent disfiguration is there, etc., or fracture has been produced, it used to come under grievous injury. But I told you, the law which we are following, that is the Qisas and Diyat law, that was made thousands of years back. It's a foolproof law. When you just write, by examining a patient, you just write, it is Khafifa oblique Chajja. Everybody will come to know that this is a slight injury and it is on the face, on such and such part, etc., etc. We go to the court and we just swear upon the God, and that what we will tell will be the truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. You just read down your report, what you have made on that particular day, maybe week, month, year, 10 years back, and they make a cross-examination, and that is how they decide, and the judge reads. But wound is defined as the forcible solution of an anatomical integrity of any part of the soft tissue of the body, including skin, mucous membrane, or a cornea, caused by application of the force. This is called a wound. You produce a wound when you use a force against a person We will discuss later about it, that what kind of a force is being used, and if you make a perpendicular injury, how it looks like when you just hit from the side, how it looks like, etc., etc. So this is about the wound. But I tell you one thing, these wounds, these injuries are classified into two types. One injury is closed wounds, other is open wounds. In closed wounds, the skin is intact from the top and there is no any discontinuity into the epithelium. And the example is a bruise. The bruise which you make over a person by using a force, by any blunt weapon, you make a bruise, and the bruise, it is a closed type of an injury. We have open type of an injury, which is called open wound, as the name suggests. This open wound, then there is a discontinuity into the superficial epithelium. Maybe you use a force, you take an iron rod, you hit with a force, and the skin will be broken. And when the skin will be broken, that is called a lacerated wound you produce. So in simple words, there are closed wounds, there are open wounds. From closed wounds, from open wound, you can decide what kind of a weapon has been used. You can well decide what is the time since injury. You can well decide that how much time has passed, that is time since injury. So this wound is a forcible solution of the anatomical integrity of any of the soft tissue of the body, including skin, mucous membrane, and the cornea, or maybe force has been applied over. Assault. Basically, according to the Section 351 Pakistan Penal Code, the assault consists of making any gesture or any preparation intending or knowing that such gesture or preparation will cause any person present to the apprehend that the person making the gesture or preparation is about to use criminal force to other. Like, maybe when I will hit, he will have this kind of a problem. Maybe I will use this kind of a product, he will develop these kind of signs, symptoms, etc., etc. So you are making an assault, and you are doing an offense against that particular person. There's another classification, that the wound is being. Any question? Okay. If you want to ask any question in between, if you are not with me and you are having any confusion, you can just write a question to me and I will answer to you. The wounds, basically, these wounds, this is simply a story. As a daily life, you find that maybe the people get an bruise, few people they get an abrasion, few people they get an graze. Like when you just come back to your house and you just push your bell, you are not carrying your keys of the flat. You are not carrying the keys. You just keep on ringing the bell once, twice, thrice. And your sister, she is studying inside. She will get up. She knows that it's you. She will come out, and when she will open the door, a bit late, you will enter inside. You are coming from the gym. You will give her a punch on biceps. When you give her a punch, she says, "Oh, you make me hurt." And after some time, she will develop a bruise. And because it is less supportive tissue over here, and the skin is fair, and the injury has been produced, that area will have a collection of the blood, but it's not an open injury, it is under the skin, and you have made a bruise. Maybe you are just going and there will be some rough object and your hand gets, in touch with that rough object, and you develop an abrasion. Abrasion in Urdu we call a kharash. And this abrasion, what you get At that time, you feel, injured, you get hurt, and you just repel from that. But abrasion has been produced when a little article, smaller article has gone across the big size of the skin, produces an abrasion like a pin. When you take across the pin, the direction of the injury will be known to you. The time since injury will be known to you. The weapon will be known to you that the pin has been used against that. So the classification of wounds and hurts according to the causative weapon. So I'm just coming to assault. So blunt weapons are there, sharp cutting weapons are there, firearm injuries are there, and maybe fire, extreme of heat will be to the body, like these, plane crash case, etc. Somebody has asked me, well, I told you injury is any harm whatsoever illegally caused to a person in body, mind, or reputation. And Muhammad has asked a question that, will you please repeat the assault? That is when a person, he will charge another person, and any kind of aggression, any kind of preparation, or intentionally or unintentionally, he will charge the other person, knowing that it is with such gesture or preparation will cause any person present to apprehend that the person making that gesture or preparation is about to use criminal force to other, or he will get hurt. This is he is doing assault. And when we write a report, when we write a medical legal report, we usually write assault as alleged, because one person has charged another person because of that, what has happened. These are the observations. I hope it's clear to you. So the classification, we have the blunt weapons. This is one of the classification. I'm not talking about the closed wounds and the open wound. I'm talking about there are blunt weapons which will produce bruises, abrasions, hematoma in the collection of the blood in any of the pocket, and the lacerations and fractures will be there. This is by blunt weapon. Just make a concept that if the car hits a person, when a car hits a person, the accident can be to the pedestrian, accident can be to the occupants of the car, accident can be injuries can be to the driver of the car, injury can be to the plane accident, injuries can be because of the train accident, injuries can be because of different, accidents that will produce. But blunt weapon, this car is a hardened blunt weapon. When it will hit a pedestrian or a motorcyclist, it will produce injuries like abrasions, bruises, hematoma, fractures, lacerations, etc. Sharp cutting weapons, as the name suggests, that sharp cutting edges there may be single sharp edge like a knife, maybe dagger is both sides sharp. If it makes an injury, then the features will be that it will have sharp cutting edges, the breadth will be more than the size of the weapon, and the margin will be averted, and you will find that profuse bleeding is there. Then we have, I'm coming. Sidra Musa has asked. If the case comes under the medical legal consideration will be performed without any illegal harm or and to hospital. Okay, I'm happy. And the sharp cutting weapons, I told you the features shows you that the margins are neat and clean cut, averted, breath is more, profuse bleeding is there. and maybe a sharp pointed or maybe stab wound like a screwdriver, penetrating injury will be there, and person will be injured with a screwdriver, death will be more, margins will be averted, injury will be smaller because the elasticity, and maybe it will be perforating through and through, injury will be there, and this is by a pointed weapon. This is one of the classification. Sidra, Musa has asked me a question: when you need to people get wounded without any illegal harm, as well as basically I tell you that in all the cases of unnatural type of injuries and all these accidental, suicidal, homicidal cases, you need to report to the police. And if you are not coming through the police station and you are critically injured, even in case of a fire, when accidentally which has taken place in a kitchen, and the female, she got burnt over the body, maybe 5%, maybe 7%, maybe 9% burns, and that is accidental burn. You need to inform the police. In all the unnatural cases, unnatural, in case of a death, you need to inform the police. But when the person is injured, we are not talking about the death in this chapter. Our patient is injured only, and in injury, in case of accident, suicide, homicide, patient is alive. You try to save the patient. Patient is in a bad shape, or maybe is bleeding, maybe got burned. You need to inform the police. And if the patient is not coming to the police station with a police letter, then you will treat the patient, you will write down your observations, and I gave you example of a burn case. In this burn case, you will just note down that which part, you will note down that this burn was a moist burn, was a dry burn, was a spark burn, was a radiation burn, what kind of burn it is. And up to what extent the burn is. There is one scientist who gave us Wallace's rule of 9. The body is classified into 10 parts, and 9 is being allotted to all the parts: front of the chest, back of the chest, front of the thigh, back of the thigh, etc. And 1 is given to the perineal region. And if the face is being burned, you will just put 9, and if chest is being burned, you will put 9, and 9 to the 18% burns is there. So in all the cases of accident, suicide, homicide, you need to inform the police, you need to get the medical legal report, and this is the answer. Then we have the firearms after blunt injuries, after sharp cutting injuries, after penetrating injuries. We have firearm injuries. And firearms, again, it's a duty of a doctor to put down the observations, because the policeman will be standing outside. And maybe you will say, I've never seen a gun. We never keep a gun in our houses. In Karachi, hardly we have any weapon in our houses. And maybe you will say that I've never seen a gun. But it's your duty. Being a doctor, it's your duty to have a look and to decide and to put observation on a piece of paper that this is the entry wound, this is the exit wound. And when you connect the entry wound with an exit wound, this is the pathway of the bullet. The bullet is the part which enters the body. It is the front portion. But if these cartridges are there in your hand, it's a blender. You call them a bullet. You call them these live cartridges of a rifle firearm, live cartridges of a shotgun firearm. And the front portion of that cartridge, it goes in the air. That's another story, that when you fire, when you put a finger on the trigger, the bullet is being fired from the barrel of the gun, and the gases will come out, the fire will come out, the gunpowder will come out, and then the bullet will come out. When the bullet will come out, it will go in the air and it will hit the target. It goes in a fraction of seconds. it hits the target. So the front portion of the cartridge is the bullet. वो कहते हैं हम कि बुलेट की अब बीती होती है कि बुलेट पे क्या बीत रही है जब वो बैरल में है, बुलेट पे क्या बीत रही होती है जब वो एयर में होती है, और बुलेट के साथ क्या गुजर रही होती है जब वो जाके टारगेट पे हिट करती है. It's another thing that the person is in an effective range where he can be killed. An animal can be killed. He is in an effective range. And for firearm, there are different type of firearms. The different type of cartridges are there. Different type of a gunpowder is there. When you press a trigger, the firing pin will hit the primer area, and primer area, which has a sensitive powder inside, start igniting, and then start igniting the gunpowder will make the gases. Maybe 1 gram of the powder will make 290 ml of the gases, and one time will come when the pellets or the bullet will be pushed out. We will talk in detail about it in our last lecture. So the bullet which is coming out from the barrel, maybe it is been moving inside the barrel having a tail wag, and when it will come out in the air, it will be going and cutting the air because the head is on its axis and the tail is being moving, which is called a tail wag. It is cutting the air, and when it will go and hit the target, maybe it's in an effective range or maybe it's not in a total effective range, that is in a total range. Maybe the bullet hits windscreen of my car. I just come out of my car and I say, oh, shukar alhamdulillah, I've been saved. But basically, if I was in an effective range, the bullet must have broken the windscreen and has hit someone, but was not in an effective range. And the bullet was in hitting the total range area, etc., etc. So entry wound is there, exit wound is there. Again, it's your duty. Policeman is standing outside. It's your duty to write the observation, what was the injuries, save the patient, treat the patient, send him to the theater for surgery and for laparotomy or for whatever, whether it's a neurosurgery case, whether it's a thoracic surgery case, whether it is a general surgery case. You send the patient for that. You write the observations. When you write the observations, you declare what kind of weapon has been used, whether a .32 revolver has been used or .38 pistol has been used. You are the one. Whether shotgun has been used, it is your duty to write down. You are also going to mention that what is the direction of the injury. We'll discuss it later on. And you are the one who's going to write that what is the distance fire of this case, whether it was a suicidal attempt, whether it was a homicidal attempt, whether it was a stray bullet came from any side, etc., etc. It's your duty. So thermal injuries are there. Any other question? The thermal injuries are there. And in thermal injuries, we have a moist burn, we have a dry burn, maybe a water being splashed over the body, big blisters will be there. And these blisters will have the content of the material inside, and maybe dry burn being burned from the stove. Hairs will be burned, vital reaction will be there, etc. Electric burns will be there, spark burns will be there. Chemical has been splashed over the body. Chemical burns will be there, like people, they have a vitriolage, that is a throwing of an acid on somebody's face in jealousy to disfigure him. You must be following on the television, etc. And radiation burns are there, and the radiation burns when people who are working in the X-ray department, radiology department, or maybe, they get. Now, there's another classification. I told you we used to follow the classification that is closed wounds and the open wounds. We declared the wounds according to the Qisas and Diyat Ordinance since 1979. And this is a foolproof law, and everything is very much clear in that. This is another classification. Before this, we were following about the types of weapons, how it is being produced. Now, the classification is according to the motives or intention the person is having, maybe therapeutic or surgical incision, amputations, like it is typically surgical wounds, and you use aseptic measures, you take a consent and you just take the patient inside the theater, you give an incision with a scalpel, and this is a typical therapeutic incision. Amputations being produced, sports injuries are there, or suicidal injuries are there, homicidal injuries are there, accidental injuries are there. In accidental injuries in which is unintentional, whereas the suicidal injuries, the person is already in tension, anxiety, worries. He don't want to live more. He will use anything available in the house. He wants to go for a cutthroat, and he will use anything available in the house, like a kitchen knife he will bring. He will close the doors and close the windows from inside. He will write a farewell letter. I am going. I don't want to live more. And he will grab the knife in his right hand. If he's a right-handed man, he start from left downwards. He will feel pain. He will just take it out. Again, he will try. Again, he will feel pain. So multiple hesitation cuts will be there on the left side. It will be left downwards, and multiple hesitation cuts will be there, and after that he will get some courage and he will just cut his left carotid, and he will die because of the hemorrhagic shock, and he will be firmly grasping the knife in his hand, and he will go into cadaveric spasm. Facial expression will be same what he was having at that time. Doors are closed, tension, anxiety, worries was there, farewell letter is lying under the paperweight, etc. This is typical suicidal cutthroat. In case of a homicidal cutthroat, there is no history, there is no motive, there is no reason behind. A person who entered his house, doors are open, windows are open, and he will bring some sharp weapon from the market. He will grab the person. Most of the time, the male is there and the female is the victim. Accused is the male. He will grab the victim and he will go for a cutthroat. It will be down upwards. Both sides carotid artery will be cut. Defense wounds will be there over the body, and no farewell letter is there. No history is there. This is a homicidal cutthroat, etc., etc. There are accidental wounds which are unintentional, like at the time of Eid, or you are just cutting, or you are not having a proper idea about how to cut. Maybe it's a sharp knife, you cut your finger and you start bleeding like anything, and you start running towards the washroom, etc. This is accidental injury. Defense wounds are there when the person attacks another person, the victim. He tried to save himself, and the injuries will be there on the hands, and these are called the defense wounds will be there. There are few injuries which are called fabricated injuries. The fabricated injuries are being produced on himself. The person will produce over his own body to divert the case. Maybe he has beaten someone. He has gone to the police station. So the person, he will put some kind of a self-inflicted injuries over his body. He will use some kind of a very light cutting weapon like a blade or something. It will not correspond with the clothes. He will remove the clothes and he will produce injuries over abdomen. It will be on approachable parts. It will be superficial, and it will be having a tailing. Like he will try to produce injury, like, oh my gosh, he will remove it. So the tailing will be there. One side is deep, other side tailing is there. This is called self-inflicted injuries. There are few injuries called the self-suffered injuries or friendly wounds, in which you will ask your friend to put some injuries over your back, and oh, it's getting hurted. Oh my God, So he will produce injuries over the back or any other part without giving any local anesthesia, and tailing will be there. It will not correspond with the clothes. These are called the friendly wounds. Then the legal classification, it is based on loss of tissue or loss of organ, gravity or severity of the wound, application of the force or exposure to position may result in wounding, that is a morbidity. Maybe the person will get killed and it will be killing called mortality, and this is one of the legal classification being used in the court language. This is something about today. The take-home message is that the study of injuries are coming under traumatology. The trauma is being produced maybe accidentally, suicidally, homicidally. Maybe it's a closed wound, maybe it's an open wound. Maybe it is of any extent. You are the one who's going to declare the injury as what kind of an injury it is. You will put down the observation. Quite many times it happens that the people don't get satisfied and they say that our observation has not been placed properly. But I told you, the electricity disturbance over here, and you can see how much I'm perspiring because the ACs are not working, and there is some problem with the electricity. Now, any questions regarding this topic? Any question? No, sir. Really? So I'm waiting for any question. So now, you know, we were talking about the take-home message that the definition of the injury, it is any harm whatsoever illegally caused to a person in body, mind, or reputation coming under injury, and the study of these injuries are coming under traumatology. And this traumatos is an old Greek word, like a thanatology was there, like other old definitions were there. So this is about trauma. Next time, we'll start with the closed wounds and the open wound. We will go through with the classification of wound. And once you will go through with the classification of the wound and how you assess that what kind of a weapon has been used, when once you will come to know how you calculate time since injury, once you calculate types of those injuries, it will be very clear to you. It's just like a story. It will become very easy, inshallah. Right? Shall we finish over here? Sorry, person to another attempt to defend himself, do the same punishment apply. Look, basically, we are supposed to write the observations. We are supposed to write the observations, and these observations, when it will go to the court, they will decide, will listen to him and will decide that he has made these injuries in a defense, or the judge will decide about it, that this was an unintentional injury, or maybe he has given more injury to him than the victim or the accused or whatever. But we are supposed to write only the injuries, and the judge is going to decide by going through with all the, right? This is not our job. I think that's all for today. See you in my next class. Very interesting.
सर क्लास ऑफ कर दूं सर मैं?
Class of